Okay, hi everyone. Welcome and good evening. My name is Sarah McClure, and I am a librarian and manager of the Youth and Teen Services Department here at the library. I would also like to introduce my coworker Gina, who's in the back. Gina is an assistant librarian here for Youth and Teen Services. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I know it's hard to be places after work, so we're so appreciative of your time. As a parent, I feel like I know two things about screen time, and they are it constantly changes. So just when I think I have something figured out, a new show comes out or a new app that my 4-year-old is obsessed with emerges, or my child gets older and then I have to refigure it out. Which leads into the second thing I feel like I know for sure. I think it gets more challenging the older our kids get, and I say that as a parent of a 4-year-old and a 15-year-old. The 15-year-old is far more difficult with his challenges than the 4-year-old is. I look forward to hearing from each panelist tonight and appreciate them being here to share their expertise. I will introduce each panelist now, and then they will be invited to present. At the end of the presentations, we will open it up to a Q&A, so please save your questions as we're going through. So let's meet the panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Andrew Kohler. He is a board-certified pediatrician and a partner at Northwest Arkansas Pediatrics, a MANA clinic. He has served on the MANA Medical Associates Board of Directors and currently serves as the medical director for Arkansas Children's Safety Center. He completed his medical degree at the University of Arkansas School for Medical Sciences and his pediatric residency at Arkansas Children's Hospital, where he received the Chairman's Scholar and the W.T. Dungan Award for Excellence in Pediatrics. Okay, that's what Gina was going to tell me. Thanks, Gina. Dr. Kohler and his wife, Shelley, have a son and a daughter. Jason Edwards has worked in education for 20 years, all with the Fayetteville Public Schools. He has a degree in elementary education and master's in educational leadership, both from Arkansas State University. He served as a SPED behavioral class teacher at Leverett, a first grade teacher at Holcomb, and a PE teacher and assistant principal at Vandergrift Elementary. He is the current principal of Root Elementary, where he's been for the past 6 years, and he currently serves as the Northwest Arkansas Area Director of the Special Olympics. He has a passion to help all teachers and students meet their full potential and ensure all students have the support that they need in all areas to be successful. Joy Shirley has served in the field of education for 28 years and is currently serving as the interim assistant superintendent of teaching and learning for Fayetteville Public Schools. She is passionate about student well-being and strives daily to impact their lives for the better. Katie Seifritz is a middle school counselor at McNair Middle School. She has a bachelor's degree in middle level education, a master's in education, and a master's in school counseling. She has worked at McNair for 18 years as an ELA teacher, instructional facilitator, and now school counselor. She is also the mother of 2. Malik Freeman is an officer with the Fayetteville Police Department. After 3 years of service as a patrol officer, he has spent the last 3 years as a school resource officer and is currently stationed at Fayetteville High School. He is passionate about working with students and fostering positive relationships. Officer Freeman is trained in youth mental health first aid, crisis intervention, and identifying bullying and preventing bullying, and he gives presentations for the district to students and caregivers centered around internet safety and cyberbullying. So now I would like to introduce our first presenter, Dr. Andrew Kohler.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so my name is Dr. Andy Kohler, and we're going to talk a little bit about kids today and screen time, because let's be real, this is something that's always on our mind, and fortunately / unfortunately has become more and more ubiquitous in our day-to-day lives. So a couple of disclaimers before I get started. while screens have been around for a really long time, it's a whole new world out there. And so a lot of our data is kind of relatively new data. And we're constantly learning, and thought has evolved as these new technologies have come around. I mean, it's hard to think about it, but it was 15 years ago that the first iPhone came out, and it's only been 12 years since the first iPad, and now these things are completely ingrained in our society. So the ability, the access to screens is more than ever, and the other thing is it's not going anywhere. While which screen a child may be looking at has changed, actual TV screen time has gone down just a little bit. Overall screen time is going up because, again, it's more iPads and devices and things of that sort. The most important thing I can say is that if you're here because you're concerned, you're not alone. This is an issue that affects kids from all walks of life, and it's something that I hear about in clinic on a regular basis from all ages. And I think that's really important as a parent to know that you're not out there on your own, because this is something that we're all kind of dealing with. So the other disclaimer is that even pediatricians' kids watch way too many iPads. So it was really funny going through this and being like, ooh, maybe you need to work a little harder at home. So what do we know? A lot of my information is going to come directly from the American Academy of Pediatrics screen time policy statement. I feel bad being here with a bunch of educators because I didn't cite my work quite as well as I should. But if you are looking to get into the nitty-gritty of it, those documents have lots of really good primary sources within them, talking about the specifics within this. The policy statement for the younger kids is called Media and the Young Minds. And it's really kind of interesting because one of the things that we see is that there is essentially no value to screen-based exposure in kids under 2. They have revised recently and said, hey, video chatting is probably okay. But even then, it's kind of one of those like more of a concession sort of things, because one of the things that we have seen in the research is that children under 2 really, they may show some ability to learn in a device, but they really struggle to take that information and apply it to their real world. There's actually an older study that a researcher took a TV, and showed a person hiding an object in the room a child was sitting in, showed the video to that child, and then asked the child to find that object. And it was very, the child could not extrapolate that the thing that they found there, or that thing that was on the screen, was something into the real world. Now, interestingly, if you took that same screen and put a picture frame around it, so they thought they were looking into a room, they actually could do a little better on it, though still not a lot. And so really, outside of using it as a way for families to stay in touch, there's not a whole lot of value. Now, does that mean the Kohler kids didn't see any screens before too? That is not the case. But I think it's one of those things that we, if we're looking for justification for our screen time, you're going to have a really hard time with that, okay? Within the research, it was pretty clearly showed that the only way you got any value on screen time is if a parent was directly with the child interacting and scaffolding the lessons. So in that case, it was more that the screen was maybe helping the parent as a prompt to teaching rather than actually learning through the screen itself, okay? As kids get a little older, they get a little more able to extrapolate what they're learning from the screen into their real life. So at that point, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends trying to keep it to an hour. Again, this was a ambitious goal at my home. But one of the things that we see is that there are some high quality educational programs out there. Okay, PBS has done a lot of work within their brands, to actually document, some benefits there. And so, trying to find those high quality outlets is really important. Okay, the problem is there's a lot of stuff that is marketed as educational, which really does not have much of an educational value. Okay. And so it's really on us as parents to try to sort out, hey, is this useful information or not? Okay. And again, it really is about the parent interaction. One of the things that they saw is that with certain ebooks, that if a child was just flipping through it, that sometimes that could actually be a less useful teaching tool, or the child was less able to retain information with the distracting visuals and pop-ups and things like that. Because the thought is that if you as a parent just let the book do all the work for you, you don't engage as much with your child. And so it's one of those things that, you see those and you think those are really great, but there's some significant limitations there. And so a lot of it comes back to being willing to take that extra step and be a part of the process for your children. So as we get older, screens become more and more of a factor in life. And this is a major thing, throughout the school-age children. The AAP recommends 2 hours or less of sedentary screen time. A lot of the emphasis is less on actually the amount of time as what else is going on in life. Okay, and that's something that I talk with my parents, when they come to me. That the first thing is, hey, is our work getting done? Are our chores getting done? Is our schoolwork done? Have we gone outside and done anything active today? Well, if you've kind of knocked all those things out of the list, I'm going to be a lot more forgiving on, whether we get to do some screen time. On the other hand, if our work's not getting done, well, then we may have to be a little bit more aggressive in our, control over the screening. The other thing is it becomes, as we get older, and I think some of the other presenters are going to go more in depth about it, so I'll leave this to them, but what are they watching? And the reality is, if you want to put your head in the sand, it's, they're all these things are active and present, and, as much as we don't want to believe in them, they are there. So what do you do? The biggest thing is you just got to be involved, and that there's no, second nature to that. Trying to set some limits. One of the biggest things I like to talk about with my families is that we don't live in a perfect world. As much as we'd like to, follow these guidelines, to the letter, it's not going to happen. But can we do better than what we're currently doing? Can we take our screens and make sure they're turned off during mealtime? Can we make sure that we're not watching screens right before bed? Can we have a Saturday where it's like, this is no screen weekend? Okay. So set some reachable goals, and then, hey, we can keep working from there. But don't feel like you have to come in and be, to go fully draconian with it on the first day, because that's the reality is, much like, dieting and all kinds of stuff, you're more likely to give up if you set unrealistic goals. Especially with my teenagers. As a gamer myself, I like to talk about how gaming is a privilege, it's not a right. And so, one of the things we like to talk about is, hey, you can earn that privilege by getting your stuff done. But first you gotta get whatever your requirements are before that. And so trying to actually set some goals like, hey, if you do this, this, and this, then, you can play and I won't be nagging you the whole time, and you can have your undistracted, Fortnite time. I just real quick direct you to the AAP's healthychildren.org. They have a really nice family media plan. So if you really like having some structure, they have a nice little thing there that you can work with. And it's really. The other thing, and this is really hard, model good behavior. Turn off your phone. It really hurt me to put that one up there, as I was like, oh, this one hit a little close to home for me. So the reality is it's not all bad. One of the things they talk about is the U-shaped curve. There is some benefit to screen exposure. Whether it be coming in contact with like-minded communities, reaching out and learning about things in the world. So there is actually mental health benefits to moderate screen exposure. So again, we're not trying to become hermits out in a cave. We just need to keep it within reason. The other thing is, media can provide teachable moments. The other night, my family, we got together and we watched the new Black Panther movie. And it was a really cool moment because before the movie, we talked about the death of Chadwick Boseman. We talked about grief. We talked about how these actors were probably dealing with a lot of that, and then what that did into the movie. It was a nice segue into talking about a death in our family. And so it actually turned into a good teachable moment with my kids that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. And so sometimes the best teachable moments are not when you plan, it's just when it happens. And so if you're there and can be present, you can have those. So the other thing is that there's a lot of information. So if you're not a great teacher, sometimes you can find some good stuff. My son wanted me to explain why summer days were longer than winter days. And it turns out I'm not a great explainer of astrophysics. But the nice people at NASA had a great video, and then we talked about it. And so, there are good resources out there, again, if you're willing to be involved. So again, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. And you got to, put that effort into it. And so, again, we're not looking to make huge changes overnight. It's all about those baby steps towards, can we use this as a positive and not a negative? So.
So thanks for coming out. I'm Jason Edwards, and introduction from principal at Rudy Elementary. I'll echo several things Dr. Kohler had to say there. Just talk a little bit about what best practices are at school, how we do things at school, and then just a few tips that go along right with what Dr. Kohler had suggested for us. So technology for learning, it's a tool, it's here, it's something that we use every day. And I know a lot of parents would like to have those devices and not have to manage Chromebooks and things as much, but they are good tools for learning, and I think the key to that is balance. So balance is the key. How do we balance traditional learning and technology and screen time at school? That's the key. We know that hands-on learning, pencil and paper, collaboration, project-based learning, and engages kids. We have to find ways to excite kids and engage them with the learning activities inside the classroom. One great example that we did this year was engineering fair and engineering week that all grades participated. There was so much hands-on collaboration, that engagement, the excitement that you saw kids, that they couldn't be pulled away. They wanted to do more. We had some grade levels ask teachers, can we do another engineering project? None of it really involved technology besides, them discussing. It was collaboration. So I think the big key to that is how do we do that? Technology is a great tool. We do want to use it. We talk to teachers a lot and try to make sure that it's not it's substitution. We go with the SAMR model: substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. If it's just substitution, you can type versus writing. Where's the trade-off? We do need the skill of typing because we live in a digital age, but at the same time, how do we get past the substitution augmentation in a lesson and we redefine a lesson? Teachers find ways in Google Classroom, they have collaborations with each other, that they have to find those projects. We have teachers who make great projects, and they not just the engineering, but through Google Classroom, they have to make slide decks, they have to do research, they have to work or build things, take pictures of it, and put it in slide decks. So technology gives us a pathway to things that we haven't been able to do before without technology, so that redefining and redefinition of that and that model is what we want to do. So we can really engage, and it's very engaging for kids. That's one thing they want to work for. They want them in class, they want tech time, but as you'll probably hear too, is a big thing is making sure that we monitor what students are on while they're in class. So instructional programs that we do use in class is Lexi and iReady, and I know we use that K4, and then it may be in middle school they may use some other curriculum, but I'm elementary, so Lexi and iReady is one thing that we use. And it is personalized learning. It's on their level. So it has those benefits. We look at data every week with teachers to see how they're doing with that. And each one of those programs is less than an hour a week is what our suggestion is. So 15 to 20 minutes a day for Lexia, 15 to 20 minutes a day for iReady is typically the goal. And they do that during some of the independent work time at the elementary level. So I would just say, have conversations with your kids, see where they're at in that, but I wouldn't push them too hard. Some of them, they do want to do better. They want to level up. It goes back to those video games. So again, it goes back to how do you balance technology and great learning. So I think it's a key, and we have training for teachers, and we talk really about that. If it's substitution, how much is that? Yeah, there are life skills for keyboarding and typing. So it's one of the best things I learned when I was in high school was how to type. You use it every day, but it's, how much do we do with that? Because that hands-on paper and pencil, from technology to hands-on activities and collaboration, it uses two different parts of the brain. So we've got to just make sure that we continue to find that right balance. Some tips, and did a little look on tips and what we do with teachers, and this is just great tips for parents, and it goes right along with that, is be accountable piece. What are you doing with your kids to be accountable on your part? Know what your kids are on, maybe know what level they are on, things that they are Lexia or iReady, or if you're in high school, know what their programs that they're using. Technology can be great. I mean, we have kids in elementary and they want to be bloggers, or when we have conversations of what do you want to do, they want to be blogger or influencers. It's just a different in this process of what we do and the jobs that are created now that kids want to do, and people make a lot of money doing it. But it's that balance. We want to make sure that we engage them, but we have to be accountable, knowing where they're at and what they're on. And then be realistic. As Dr. Kohler spoke to, that is, be realistic of the time. We know that my kid, she's 3, and she has an iPad. She loves it, but we do put timers on it and have to limit that because that's all they want. They would sit there all day if you let them. So find those ways to engage kids. And if if you start somewhere that's realistic, if you have too much tech time, reduce it by an hour a day or cut it in half. Give those expectations and then have those discussions. And as being a parent and watching a child grow up, with the technology, they're just drawn to iPhones and iPads or screens as watching movies. But we have to be realistic that is part of their life. But how do we balance is still the key there. Be engaged, know what they're on, have conversations with them about what they're watching on there. Our teachers know and assign certain lessons in Lexia, or they're watching their Lexia. We monitor through GoGuardian at school to make sure that they're not wandering off. Our filters do a great job, but filters do not catch everything. So we have to just be mindful and monitor that. So be engaged. One of the great things I got to experience this week, we just started preschool, had been in an in-house daycare, so preschool was one. So we got to have that engagement with Parker, who's my daughter. She turns 4 next month. But it was fun to see. She went to preschool. She hadn't brought worksheets home and writing letters and different things there. So she pulled out the worksheet, and at dinner, we just had her talk to us about, hey, tell us about this sheet. And she was all about talking to us about what she did, how she learned, what she loved. So I think that's be engaged with your kids. Make sure that you know that you care about them and you set those limitations. And it just goes back, put those handheld devices away. I know that I'm caught up, and my wife probably gets tired of me checking email or text and different things at night too. So as parent, put those away, have those set times with kids. And the biggest thing is to be engaged with them is reading. Our teachers, and one thing we talked to them today at our PLCs, which is our meeting times with teachers, is really focused on getting text in hands, getting those textbooks into their hands, making sure they're reading. Screens are great to do some learning, but getting those handheld devices away, getting a book out, having them read, and celebrating what they're doing with reading. I think reading is the biggest key to success with all of our students. So create those phone-free zones in the home and make sure that you have that time set aside every night to read 15 to 20 minutes with your kids. That's probably the most powerful thing. And just be engaged and continue to do that. And that's what our teachers do, is we try to engage kids as much as possible. And this time of year, beautiful days like today, go outside. Our teachers, we have some space outside, and as it warms up, we encourage our teachers to take classes out towards the gym. We have a courtyard, and I would say that's one of the big keys. As spring comes in and we want to do some outdoor learning, get the kids outside, make some science projects, or go outside and read with your class outside. You can read outside just as much as you can inside, but go outside, take a hike, go to the park, do something, and put the devices down. They're great learning tools, but we know that there is a balance there. So, and then this is just a graphic from the CDC website that I grabbed. Give some ideas of tips and pointers there. So I would say just continue to be engaged with what they're doing at school, and ask questions to teachers. Ask us if there's anything we can help with. But we do monitor that and make sure that we try to curb that's outside of our core curriculum, that's not engaging. That's what we want to engage too, but that key is balance.
Appreciate you being here. I'm Joyce Shirley. I think they mentioned earlier, Katie Seifert. So we're excited. We make a good team, so we're happy to present together.
So I just want to our umbrella is 5th through 8th grade. I love this age group, and I have a passion for middle schoolers and just how their brain works, and also how to support the adults in the world of having a middle schooler. I'm one of them. I have a 7th grader. And so I always like to start with our why of why we love to talk about screen time. And today we're going to just give you the real tips, and I'm going to talk about the perspective for middle schoolers to help. So the first one is the adults. Middle schoolers like to hold us accountable just as much as we want to hold them accountable. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about ways we can approach that. I'm very passionate of helping kids realize to not let technology be in charge, let them be in charge of their technology, ownership, but also knowing how they have ownership over their world, and that's very important, especially in middle school. We're going to talk about a lot of data about the mental health side of it, and then the last one is the balance, trust, and supervision. It's more about just creating an environment where these conversations can take place, and so we'll be giving some tips and some ways that we can help you bridge that with your child.
All right. This is a great website, and I'm not sure, I know Gina had mentioned she's listed all the resources, so you'll have those. But it's called Common Sense Media, and so it's a great platform for anyone that's in charge of use care. And so they talk about just so many different parent tips. There's so many different great articles that are on there. They do reviews for movies, apps, TV, games, podcasts, you name it, YouTube channels. And then they also give some great information for the platforms of TikTok and Snapchat and all those pieces that we know for social media reasons and other reasons that our kids are on. So just, again, it's great, and they have so many wonderful topics that are on there. This information is a little bit dated, but it was
kind of the closest thing I could find that talked about the age range. I would say it's still pretty comparable, except for we know during the pandemic, I would definitely think that there would have been a spike just because socialization was more limited, and so we know kids would have been on all these different platforms more often. But I think some of the things that are interesting is just talking about when you look at the average daily use. And of course, it was a great segue for Dr. Kohler and Mr. Edwards to talk about all the good things that we're also going to say. I think we've now hit it with every single person that's been up here, but talking about the importance of sleep and so many other pieces. So if you have them on using social media for this amount of time throughout their day, and you're also thinking about time that they're in school, which is about 7 hours of their day, and then any other time that they need to have just for themselves or things they're involved in, and sleep, which we know at the age that we're talking about is recommended sometimes 9 to 10 hours of sleep because so much of their brain and body is developing, then how are they squeezing all this in? So definitely something we'll talk more about, how we help them to learn to self-monitor and then for you to be that great role model for them.
It always wows them whenever we tell the kiddos at this age that, you need as much sleep as a newborn baby. And
Yes.
they sleep a lot. And they're like, really? I'm like, how much did you get last night? Oh, 5 hours? And I'm like, well, and that's just kind of where that gap is. And so that's a big,
Yes.
important piece of it. For
It
sure.
is, very much so. And so, of course, you can look at the difference between, the ages of teens and tweens over there for just their media diets. But then also, too, there's a lot of just passive consumption that you see within those graphics. And so sometimes, and we're even guilty of it, too, as adults, right? We're tired. We just kind of need to decompress from our day. We just want to mindlessly scroll and get on something that we don't have to make decisions about, don't have to think much about. But then if we're not careful, we can realize we've been sucked in for an hour and start going down all the different rabbit holes, and our kids go down even more of those because they're on so many different platforms. So again, it's just that mindfulness and how do we help be the role models for them as we're teaching them how to have that healthy balance as they develop.
Okay. And with common sense media, one thing that whenever I'm talking with parents, and I think someone said about how something new's coming out every day, and this is the place to go for that because fake it till you make it. Get on there, look at what what your child is looking at, so then you are right there with them, if not more, of knowing what that app is actually doing, that website. And so anytime you hear them saying a certain thing, that's the place to go, is Common Sense Media on any of those things. And then you'll be knowledgeable enough to know what next steps or what you need to take for whatever they're on.
Yes, it's broken down very easy
It is.
for families to be able to utilize. Another thing just for us to look at, and we know just development of brain. We learn so much even continually about brain development, and now they tell us that our brains aren't fully developed until we're 25. And so there's a lot that is happening, and even at very quick rates. But when we look at teenage brains, and I have a link here to the National Institute of Mental Health, because there's a lot of different research that goes back and forth, and we'll talk a little bit more in an article here soon about overall mental health and well-being. But we really know when we're talking about well-being, it's a balance of the whole. It's not just total mental health, it's also physical health, and so we're looking at multiple things. But it's just important for us to understand that the growth that's occurring for our brain, I feel really inferior talking about this in front of Dr. Kohler, but I'm going to act like I know what I'm talking about because we just, we kind of like get to deal with brains all day long at school. But we do know that it is, even though the brain is starting to become its full size at that point, there still is so much growth that's occurring. And the portion of the brain, that prefrontal cortex, which is where all the decision making comes, the problem solving, organization, that is going to come later. And so it's important that even though they're making decisions and they may appear that they are very mature in their decision making, that's why that process is still going to be different, because they still need guidance from those positive role models. And also too, we just talked about the mature brain, but also learning that our brain is so adaptable and malleable, but we want to be sure that what we're presenting and what we're feeding that brain is also keeping it healthy. And so again, that's just another reason when we think about overall well-being is what are they being exposed to? Because as you know, it's those algorithms on anything. Once you start looking at certain pieces of information on technology, it'll start gearing itself even to your searches and everything else towards that. So is that a healthy consumption of certain opinions or different pieces that are constantly being fed to your child? And also too, just, we've talked about mental disorders a little bit with some of the other pieces, and we'll talk in a minute about an article that I had found that I've linked in here, actually 2 different articles. But if there's already a predisposition to some of those things, and we know there's so many changes with our kiddos at that age. You have hormones, you have peer influence, and so many other developmental challenges that they can be working through. And so we also just want to be sure that they have an opportunity, that their stress has a positive outlet, and in technology really may not be that best outlet for them, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Again, this one talks about sleep and the 9 to 10 hours of sleep at night and how crucial that is, even though our brain is very resilient, but it is important that we take care of it and protect it long term. Thank you, Nana. Perfect. In here, I have a couple of articles that are linked. I'm not going to pull them up for you. They will be available in your resources. But I think the most important thing, and I read several different pieces of research and even looked at some different books, and I think it feels automatically that we would want to assume that the more that a child is on and utilizing technology, that the greater increase for mental health that would provide. What I'm finding is that statistically it's not showing a significance that technology is the one that's causing that, but there's other factors that if they are at play, technology definitely can increase that in occurring. So when we think about environmental factors, childhood trauma, we also just think about socialization, lack of, and so all those impacts that it can have if there's genetic disposition to mental health disorders that run within your family. And so if that's the case, you definitely want to watch your child even closer, just to be sure that they're not gathering their self-worth from what they're seeing in technology, that they have a strong family support system, that they're involved in other opportunities to be social and to have those social network connections that are crucial for them knowing who they are. We also know too that lack of sleep can also increase mental health issues. We see that often even within adults. So we get really tired, we're run down, and our coping mechanisms start to drop. And so when we want kids to be their healthiest, we have to be sure that sleep is crucial for them to be able to handle the stress of what they're experiencing every day. Also being outside, not being inside, like Mr. Edwards talked about, getting that vitamin D. Vitamin D is also important for mental health. And sometimes when you start looking at individuals who struggle with mental health issues, vitamin D deficiencies are also a correlation that I've read a lot about and have known in other cases. So it's just important that we get outside. There's a lot of research on mental health and just being outside in nature, feeling the ground under your feet, the noises in nature, the sun, the wind on your face. So many things that we just take for granted, but our bodies respond to that naturally, and just movement is healing in itself, as well as also relieving stress. So one thing we had talked about that was interesting, it said 1940s, people were afraid that their children were going to become radio addicts. And it was this big conversation with parents, and I thought it's all relative, right? So really, we're just having to model for them how to maintain that balance, because there's always going to be something new coming along.
Well, and one thing with the mental health side, I think sometimes in our world we go the extreme of, suicide and cyberbullying, but there's so many of those things of the day-to-day, those teachable moments that come up where if we can, as parents, realize that, the consuming of that also is about body image and about the likes. And something I even talk to my kids at school through guidance. I mean, I'm over 40, and sometimes if I see a post online that, I wasn't invited to something, it stings my heart, and I'm an adult. And so it's okay to talk about those things, because that side of the mental health is very important as well, for them to know that, it's not that we're wanting to ban this new world of, it's just that mental health side is important to talk about those things and how it compares to just even those real conversations, as in a friend hurting you at school. Well, a friend said this nasty thing to me on text message, and just having that process of feelings is the same. Not just, we'll delete it and no more text messaging. That's just not real. We're kind of past that, especially, again, the umbrella we're talking about, to 8th grade.
I would also say too, just tagging along with conversation about, unplugging for bedtime and mealtime, but also thinking about what does that look like for your family, because those are precious times for y'all to have these conversations together. One thing we always did at our dinner table was roses and thorns, and so they had to list a rose and a thorn about their day, or it could be 2 roses and whatever thorns, but it got them to talking instead of saying, how was your day? It got them to great collaboration. Oh, sorry, we were just going over.
Oh, we're okay. Well, here we go. Okay. So slow process, like teaching them to drive a car. You are going to get those eye rolls and but I share this analogy with the kids in school. I say, kiddos, do you think your parents are just going to hand you those keys at 16? It's okay, go on that busy highway, have fun. And they're like, no. That's technology, kids. I'm like, are they going to just drop you off in that dark alley park? Have fun. I'm like, no. I'm like, that's technology. I go, that's where you are. I go, and this is what I say. I say, your parents love you. They care for you. And let them set those boundaries for you. Because we talk about the research side of their brain with them as well. Because they are like, what is going on with me? And I'm like, no, it's okay. You're just going through puberty and we can figure this out. And so they need to hear those things. They have to hear that it's real, that I just want to sit by you and help you drive this car. Let me sit by you and see this. And that's the real talk, so you maybe don't get the huff and puff. They'll listen to that more than, we'll just put your phone down, because what they'll do, sorry, I feel we have a minute, so I'm trying to hurry, is you don't want to turn it into an us versus them. All right, and so my job, of course, I know being with the Lens, is you want to start trying to just personally work on yourselves first. If they start just seeing you modeling it, they start slowly doing it without you having to tell them. All right, and so that's kind of where you don't want to create this back and forth and make it where you have, there's family shared things on phones. There's certain things on your phone that instead of it turning into this fight back and forth, you say, hey, you can have that. You have to just kind of sit down and have that kind of mature talk with them. Okay, I understand you want this, but this is what I need you to have on your phone. And it's the family share, or let me check your phone at, if you're having those concrete examples with 5th through 8th graders, they're more likely to not, put their heels in the ground and not want you to do that. Just go ahead.
This is just an example of one of the resources that's on Common Sense Media, but it's a family tech planner. And so it really just allows you to have conversation on the front end to be preventative as you talk about how to stay safe, appropriate interactions with others, and if someone inappropriately interacts with you, how would you deal with that? And so really just to help with that planning of usage of time, so you're planning for success on the front end, and it should make that easier for you.
Parent peer pressure is a real thing, and I feel it too, about it's okay to talk to each other. When they're babies, you are always calling your friend, how did yours stay up all night? When they get to this adolescence stage, it's like no one talks to each other. Lean on each other, help each other out, talk to those people that are in your trust circle, because that's how you'll get through this time of adolescence. And also, the holding out for a device is fine. This is my viewpoint. Holding out and saying, nope, you cannot have a phone, you can't have anything. You do you as a parent, but you have to remember that your kids are also in a social media world. They're in a phone world. So you want to try to meet them in the middle and talk to them like, okay, I won't let you have the phone, but what can we do to help you feel like you're connected with your peers that are texting all the time? Those are just real conversations, because you want your child to also, not feel isolated in that type of world. And that's kind of conversations I have with kids, of even like starters of things they can talk to their families about. Like when they say, well, my mom just will not let me have a phone until I'm 13. Of course, I'm like, well, I respect that, and that's fine. But I understand where you're coming from on, you get to school and all of a sudden there's this, something happening and you were left out because you weren't on that. I mean, that's real things that as a parent we have to kind of look at both sides and make sure it's not all or nothing, because it's just our reality and it's our kids' reality of this is what they're living in right now. And then here are the resources for you to look through that you can kind of lean on. Of course, I'm really into podcasts because I'm always in the car. And are these on the sheet? Yes, they are on the sheet. Gab phone is a great phone. I've had some families use that when you're not wanting to have the iPhone or that type of phone. Gab phone's a great phone to start with. And so that is a good bridge for anybody that is needing that. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry, we went over just.
I know, I'm sorry.
Okay, so my name is Malik. I'm with the Fayetteville Police Department. I'm also at the Fayetteville High School. My presentation is probably not as upbeat as before. Basically, I'm just going to kind of go over things that I've seen at the high school level in terms of students using social media and some of the negatives of it. And then, you know, we can discuss what can be done to kind of help navigate through everything. So we're just going to start with the effects of social media. So the one thing that I've noticed or that I've had to deal with students are lives. So when they're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they can go on live, and some of the times they'll go in there and talk ill about another student. And so they'll happen over the weekend, they'll come back Monday just absolutely heated about what's going on. And so we'll kind of discuss it, and they'll be like, well, so-and-so was talking about me on here, then, and I heard from someone else that they said that, and then it causes a lot of issues. So TikTok is a huge trendy issue at the high school. Anywhere you can walk around, anywhere in the halls, you'll see students doing TikTok dances just in the middle of nowhere. So this year there was a trend, and the trend was you were in these two separate groups. I don't really remember what the groups were about. Long story short, one group was quote unquote battling with the other group. Even though they weren't actually fighting, they would make it very realistic. And so it would cause issues where students would just randomly run in different positions with their phones out, pretending like they were fighting. You know, staff is thinking something's going on, so we're running all over the place. It got to the point where students actually had to be disciplined to control the effects of this. And that's just one of the trends that students are following because they think it's trendy or cool or what have you. They don't really understand the repercussions of what they're doing. Another thing is about students sharing their worst moments. So my example of that would be fighting. When students get in a fight, the first thing to come out are phones, and they're always recording what's going on. And you know, they don't understand that, you know, whatever they post on social media, whatever stays with them. And it can be, later on, it can be embarrassing to the person who started the fight, and it can be embarrassing to the person who was, you know, a victim of the fight that had nothing to do with it and just got attacked, but now they're posted over social media as well. So attention span issues, I spoke with some, obviously I'm not in a classroom, so I spoke with some students and spoke with some teachers and, you know, and what I have seen firsthand. So a big thing that I've heard was students being on their phones during instruction time. So when they're in the classroom, some of them are pretty much not even there. They're there, but they're on TikTok or they're snapping their friends or they're on Instagram or Facebook, what have you. They're really not paying attention to what's going on inside the classroom. So, in relation to the social media, I have students come in my office, we talk from time to time. I had a student come in there and actually admit to being addicted to Snapchat. They said, yeah, you know, I love Snap, I'm on it all the time, you know, I'm always texting my friends. If I don't have my phone for more than 5-10 minutes, you know, I start getting angry or what have you. I was like, that's kind of a problem. And they're better now, but last year was definitely an issue. So I've also had issues with speaking with students without them immediately wanting to go to their phone. So whether it's just general conversation I have with them or, you know, it's regarding discipline issues, students are always on their phone, either texting someone else or taking Snapchats while they're in the office, you know, bragging, I guess, about how they're in trouble or what have you. and sending them to other people. You know, I'll have, say a student got in trouble, I'll have other students come to me and say, hey, so-and-so said they were in your office and they sent this snap or what have you. So that's some of the issues. I guess they're just so addicted to their phones that they just have to share every single moment of their life. Okay, so transitioning to the safety and legalities of it. I think that we need to let our students know is that what's shared on social media stays on social media. There's this fallacy or this belief that, you know, for example, Snapchat, they think they can send a snap, it's there for 10 seconds, what have you, then it's gone. They don't understand that people have the ability to, you know, use their burner phone or their secondary phone and take pictures of this Snapchat and send it around, or the video and send it around to everyone. You know, they don't understand that Snapchat obviously is linked to the U.S. where, you know, that goes to this library where it keeps all the snaps that can be pulled at any time. And I think, I try to tell them that, and yeah, sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. But if we ingrain it in them and let them know that, hey, this is what's happening, then maybe they'll be more inclined to listen. And then I have some videos because I'm a social learner. I don't just like people talking. And it's going to explain why some of the videos that they're making can be hazardous to their safety. Okay, so I don't know if these are going to actually play or not, but if not, it's okay. So I like TikTok. I like scrolling on there, looking and everything. Why didn't you just hit the button?
You can just click on your image.
Oh, okay. So while I was making this presentation, ironically, I stumbled across this TikTok. And long story short, this person made a TikTok, and a random person was able to find their address. And so I'm just kind of go across how that happened.
How many people gonna be there?
Okay, so backstory. This is during Halloween of this year. So this person, instead of giving out candy, they give out 2-liter drinks, and I guess it's very popular in their neighborhood. So they made TikToks about it, and while they're making these videos, they kind of share different parts of their residence or their neighborhood. So they made the TikTok. The second video is her making a response to this person asking, where are you located? You know, where can we get these 2-liter drinks?
Everybody want to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
All right, so just mentally keep that image in your head right there. All right, so got some screen grabs from the comments. So in this, you know, they're asking, you know, where she is, of course. And so she responds that she's in Southeast. And then she responds again and says that, let's see, she responds and said that she is in Calgary, I believe. Yeah, she said she lives in Southeast Calgary. So from there, someone was able to type in Southeast Calgary, go on Google Maps, I assume, and get her address, which is located here at 243 Autumn Circle Southeast. So on the left is from the video that you took that mental image earlier. Here's the house. Right here is also the house that I got when I typed in the address at 243 Circle Southeast. So what I did was I found another video that they were in, and this shows the house across the street. This is from her balcony. This is the house right there. So it proves that even something as simple as giving just a direction and an area, someone can find out where you are. You know, and some of these students are making TikToks at their apartment complexes, or videos at their apartment complexes, or their or just in front of their house, where that just have the house numbers. You know, if they know what city you're in, then, you know, it's very easy to find out where you are. So some legal issues that I've had to deal with, social media wise, distribution of, nude photos and videos, sexting and whatnot. Even if the person sends a nude photo to some person, then they're, it's fine on their end. Somebody can just easily send that out to someone else without their permission, without their consent. And any distribution of, nude photos and videos is child pornography. So then, we have to get involved and, just kind of, we're really messing with their lives at that point over something that could be stopped, could be prevented in the first place. Cyberbullying, group chats, terrible. I had an incident not too long ago where somebody purposely made a group chat, involved the person they were going to talk about, talked about them, and then a fight occurred after that. So I don't know. Cyberbullying is definitely a huge thing among social media. Students use those all the time. Terrorists are threatening, where they'll be like, "Hey, I'm gonna fight you," or they'll make videos, or they'll go on lives like, "Hey, I want to fight you," things of that nature. And then of course there's harassment. I've had issues where students have made multiple different accounts, just to harass someone. They'll come in my office like, "Hey, what can I do?" It's like, "Hey, listen, block them, tell them to talk to you anymore, what have you." They'll do that. They'll just make another account and another account to the point where we have to go a harassment route. And so those are just some of the things that I've noticed in the high school level in terms of issues with social media. But I know there are ways that we can prevent all this. Obviously, from hearing other panelists, they've discussed some methods that they have come up with in the younger levels. So as long as we start young and work our way up, then I believe we can help keep all our students and children safe. So, thanks.
Okay, we'll invite all the panelists to come up to the table. Gina's setting a microphone up, and we will open up our Q&A. It's 7 o'clock right now, so we have about 30 minutes. So please ask whatever questions you have.
Love it. Yay.
So hi, my name's
Not all
Jennifer.
screens are bad.
So my name's Jennifer Bricker, and I have two children. I have a third grader and a fourth grader, and our conversation last night as I made dinner was, but everybody has a TV in their room, and everybody has a cell phone, and I'm the only one in my class. So from your professional opinion, everything that you ladies said about the middle school age really hit home, even though I have a third grader. She doesn't have a phone yet. Is there a recommended age? I know every household's different. People introduce phones and devices for different reasons. Both of our kids have a tablet, but they don't have the small portable mobile device, and many of the third graders do. So are there recommendations on when to have individual devices, and do you have any professional advice on, but everybody's doing it?
Yeah.
So.
Well, not everybody. I always say that to my own kids because, that everybody, but the recommended age, of course, is 13 for a phone. This is more my opinion. So it's just I think it has to do with knowing your child. And I think if they're wanting it for communication, that's one thing. But having it for any type of social media, any of that, no, not at all for those. And of course, and my poor children, of course, because I am a school counselor and I have a third grader and she asks too. And the recommended age, of course, I think says 13 but it all depends on your child and how they can handle things and I also feel like it's also how our relationship with our own child is. And that's why starting young and just starting that balance of, maybe letting them sit down with your phone and showing them things. And that will help us, because that's what one part of mine is. I mean, the parenting side is really hard when it comes to these things. And it's emotionally hard, in my opinion. And so just knowing that, but as always, go with your mama gut on those things. And not that I'm judging anyone that has, everyone is that's kind of that conversation. But just from my own personal thing, the phone, anything that has to do with the phone, like social media or any of those things, I'm just a hard no as a parent. I'm just going to be, transparent on that.
So, kind of going with the know your kid thing. So, I just got back from a dad's trip, and one of the kids in the trip, who's a fourth grader, did have a phone. My third grader is a long way from getting a phone, but they said it was actually a really good thing for him because he had a lot of social anxiety and anxiety in new situations, and so having that phone, where he could contact was actually very useful. So yeah, it's really kind of situational and about its use. The counterpoint is my son really wanted to play some online game with his friend, and so I set him up a Discord server where only I can admit people into it, and so his 3 best friends, have access to it, and their parents do, and so I can see anything they text, and they can do a little voice chat over this thing, and they play their mobile game, and it's really kind of funny to listen in. But it allowed him to have that little social media outlet. So even without having a phone, and so sometimes it's maybe finding the compromise of what are you looking for, and can we get some of that without the actual device?
And honesty of just saying, I know it's hard. It's hard. And just having that honest conversation with your, that's what just even with my own students at school, I know it's hard that your other friends have that. What could we maybe, I like that you said, like the balance of let's talk about how we can meet in the middle on some things and just try to, they're just at that age. It's not negotiating really. And of course, I just know middle schoolers, I just not negotiate. It's more of like, it's how they're feeling, and they are probably feeling left out, and that's real. And so just having that real talk, so that's just another part of it, is that's good that they're wanting to talk about it, even, if it's hard conversations.
And I'm not for sure about all platforms. It used to, like you were saying, 13, for social media, you would have to be at a certain age. It would require you before you could set up an account. Now, of course, you could put in any age, but those kind of things are important to know, to be able to share with your children too, that you follow the rules, and that's what the rules say that you need to do, and there's reasons why those are in place, and it's protect you too. And also too, my kids are young 20, so technology has drastically changed, but middle school was when my son got his phone, but it was for safety reasons, because we weren't at the same school anymore, and I needed to be able to get a hold of him, or he needed to be able to get a hold of me for things for after school, and so that was whenever that became. But he always knew I had to know his password. He could never change anything without letting me know. I need to be able to get into it. Not that I would, but if I needed to at any point in time, because I paid the phone bill. Mm-hmm. So it was something that was shared. There was nothing that we ever hid from each other.
This is a shift. It's kind of directed for youngers, like having a kid entering elementary school. What are just some, you mentioned there are some great educational tools. So what are some of those apps or devices? I know, got all the reading tools that are out there, studying for phonics and all of that. So first part is what are some of those for both of you guys? And then as we talk about reading and things like that, where does screen time come into play into an e-reader and the time spent on that?
I'll talk maybe towards what they can do when they get there. I don't really have any recommendations on apps. There's so many of them that are out there. But as school related, what we use, like I said, in elementary right now, some of the biggest programs that we do, and it's part of our curriculum, and we have expectations, is Lexia. It's a research-based technology that we use for reading. It starts in lower grades as kindergarten, builds up phonics, letter ID, and recognition. And then iReady is another one that helps with math and math facts, math fluency. But I would say the biggest, and to touch on the last part, is e-readers. I'm not sure about that. I would highly say the best thing is getting those beginning learning textbooks. Having a textbook in hand, a reading, not a textbook, but a reading book, having text, something physical you can touch. Our public library is a great resource. We have great classroom libraries, and our curriculum is starting in lower grades. We call them decodable books for phonics. Constant vowel consonants where it starts. Once they know their letter recognition, letter sounds, you start with those short vowels. Anything there that you can do. I mean, they make so many new decodables that are connected to kids and those things, that they can be successful, something that they're successful with to become a beginning reader. So I would say focus really on that, and just reading with your kids at night, number one thing for somebody coming in. Start that love of reading. Come to the public library, come to our school libraries and check them out. Ms. Jacobus at our library does a fantastic job of, helping students in kindergarten find books that they love, whether it's about, their favorite pet or their favorite action figure, or maybe their favorite athletes. She tries to get them, and I think just having those books may be above their level, but we let them check them out, bring them home. That way they have that book in hand, and seeing those words and having you help read with them, I think is one of the most impactful things that a parent can do at that early age. Preschool, like I said, my daughter is there, starting to really be able to know letters and know letter sounds. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is just keep them interested in the love of reading. And I think that's the big key.
So on the app side, it gets real hard. The places where I actually found like real data, it had to do more, and again, PBS is the one that's kind of been leading on the, hey, we're actually going to do some studies on this. And so that was more for their shows. I didn't see any directly linking to their apps as, having done it, but I would think that, if they're willing enough to actually put science behind what they're doing, that they're probably doing that with their apps as well. I'm going to say kind of a thing that some people might not believe, but for older kids, I love Minecraft. It's Legos in a computer space. If you had to pick a screen game, for your kid to play, I mean, I would go Minecraft over any of them. The ability to interact, to customize, to learn some basic computer programming stuff with the red block. So I always love talking with kids, and they say, I'm a big Minecrafter. Okay, cool. Tell me about what you build, and things like that. So obviously we got to keep within reason. We gotta, watch our time frame. But if you had to choose a screen-based game, I mean, I think it's a great one.
So I would just say, I do agree, Minecraft has great opportunities for kids to get real creative. I think there may even be on that too, is there opportunity though for them to chat. There's certain things you just would want to be sure you're not utilizing certain features, so you don't have to worry about that piece of interaction, unless it's like you worked out with, and we've worked out with other parents and kids, so you know exactly what's happening and you have access to that. And I'd also just echo what Mr. Edwards said about reading. There's opportunity when you're reading with your child that you just have such rich conversation. You can relate it to experiences that you've had together as a family. You can ask great questions. You can talk about so many things that are happening, and maybe even a different outcome of how they might end the story if they had been the author. So you can't replace that. The only research really I have seen as far as any kind of an e-reader is just that it's important, because sometimes when there's a lot of distractions, kids can get lost and they're not focused on the text. So what I have seen in the past is, if you're going to do it, what's effective is that the text lights up. And that's important, that you're utilizing your finger even too to keep your eyes tracking, and that way you're not losing track of where you are as you're hearing it read to you. So that would be something probably to consider.
I wanted to mention to that question that Common Sense Media rates some apps for younger kids, so you might want to look into that. I did want to ask Malik a question. I have a 9th grader, and he got earbuds for Christmas or AirPods, and I was surprised to find out that he can wear them all day, every day during his high school day. I was just kind of curious, like, what's y'all's approach as leaders in the school when, like you mentioned, you can hardly discipline a child without them checking their phone? Like, is that a conversation you guys have? Or is it just like, we can't do anything at this point, like it's over?
Well, I mean, it's yes and no. I mean, usually what we'll do is we'll ask them to, if they're checking their phone that we're talking to, we'll ask them to put their phone down. We'll be like, hey, listen, let's look at each other, let's have like a conversation, because we need to figure out what's going on in the first place. I can't have a conversation if you're distracted looking at your phone. Earbuds, AirPods, all that, they're the same way. We'll always ask them to take them out, put them in your hand, hold them on. You can, not listen to music or what have you for 5-10 minutes while we have our conversation. It's definitely a problem though, but most of the time, as long as we say it respectfully, we kind of explain ourselves a little bit after we ask them to do what they're supposed to do, they'll do it.
I had 2 questions. That was the first part of one of them was, which I'm Heather. I have 2 elementary school students, but one is going to middle school. So I do feel like we're very much on the cusp of really, diving into technology. And of course, coming out of COVID and online learning, my students were exclusively virtual learners for a large part of that. So we really dove in, very quickly. I'm pretty shocked to hear that students, it sounds like maybe even at the middle school level, but for sure at the high school level, have such access to their devices at school. And perhaps I'm just dating myself because, cell phones were emerging as I was a senior in high school, but, you were expelled if your phone went off. Not my phone, because I certainly didn't have one, but my friends that did. It was such a huge deal. So I know that we've obviously, moved on since then, but is that pretty common among districts? Is that, and maybe this is more of like a school board directed question, but I'm just curious if that is pretty common among high schools everywhere, or is that just a...
Fayetteville Public Schools does have a cell phone policy, but I actually am really proud of McNair because we make a point to, they are not allowed to have their cell phones out during the school day. Now, of course, we have, episodes here and there, but, and we teach them the why behind it. Like in the morning when we have 300 children in the cafeteria and they want to get out their computer and start playing a game, we go around, no, we have no device zones. And we tell them, we just want you to be a kid. We want you to interact with each other, And so that's kind of where and we have consequences if it's not followed through after we go through our 4 questions. And it's, we have a process for it. So our middle school has, we really follow the policies of what Fayetteville Public Schools cell phone policy is. And so I can only speak behalf of middle schooler, but it kind of matches though developmentally, what we just talked about is like but it is kind of what you're saying about school board. It is a community approach, because as anything in school, we have different families and different walks of life walking into our building every day. And there's a lot of different things under the umbrella of what goes into a school. So it's one of those things that I think having those honest conversations as a community and maybe like how important it is that, that we don't wear the AirPods, but some think that's not a big deal. So it's kind of those kind of things, just like any kind of conversation. But at middle school, we have a policy we follow.
But at the high school level, they can pretty well have them?
Well, I would say it varies.
Not putting you all on the spot.
I think it varies depending sometimes on teacher.
Right, because there is one teacher this year that made it very adamant, no phones allowed in their classroom. And then, I've overheard other teachers kind of follow suit of that because it was so successful in the first teacher's classroom that the other teachers wanted the same thing because of the distraction with the phones. I think it's doable. It's just, obviously a lot of teachers are going to get pushback from it, and some teachers
Yeah.
have a harder
And we
time
have to
than
have
others.
community support too. Like, I mean, there's so much teachers are balancing in a classroom. It does take kind of what, from kindergarten up to have those healthy habits from community, family, and school. It's that balance.
And teachers do, especially for secondary, they talk about polite usage. I mean, they talk about rules of if they're gonna have them, what that looks like during class time. I think one of the things too that, just like you were talking about, sometimes it becomes a behavioral issue because for some kids, that phone is worth a lot of money. And they're worried that someone's gonna steal it or if it's gonna get damaged. So they want to be able to have it on their person, on their body. And also too, sometimes it's kind of like, wearing that nice pair of shoes or that cool pair of jeans. It's also, it's a status symbol for a lot of them. And so sometimes it can turn into a behavior issue and it's really not worth the battle. If they can put it away, not use it, but sometimes teachers, they're teaching, so they're not always able to monitor that.
Okay, well, thank you all. That's just good to know. The other question I had was, I mostly paid attention to the school age recommendation of 2 hours or less of day of technology. So as a parent, do we need to take into consideration that they're hopefully not on it 2 hours a day at school, but perhaps at least an hour after talking to my students, between Lexi iReady and sometimes other things they're doing within Google Classroom. We need to take that into consideration and
Technically,
when they
yes. Again, I think it's all about trying to make sure you're getting your other stuff done. Yes, the official recommendation is based on including some of that time at school. Again, this is where ideals hits reality. And so, I think trying to find ways, at the end of the day, to have it limited, and make sure that's not the first thing we go to, that, hey, when we get home, here's are the things that we got to get done, and some of that is, being a family, some of that is getting our work done, some of that is getting some exercise of some kind, and then if we've got all that stuff done, we've been that, then yeah, hey, we can watch a movie, we can do what we need to. And so even these documents are kind of living documents, it was a lot more hard, about 2 or 3 years ago when they first came out, a lot more hardcore, like to get to 2 hours, and they really have evolved their language to say, to really be a, more dependent on what else is going on.
Hi, my name is Svetla Dimitrova, and I have a question that has to do more with self-regulation, and if you have any tips, because we talked about brain development and how we really, they're going to be in their 20s. So part of me is, yes, it's unavoidable. We want to introduce them. A lot of the devices, we can maybe have some control. Of course, it's not a total control because there are always going to be other kids and different regimes, right? So, but then I'm trying to figure how much of a losing battle it is to even, or is there good ways to help them self-regulate? Because I also don't want to constantly be policing and measuring, are we at an hour and a half or 2 hours and a half? Like, where are we? So can we do anything to help kids kind of self-regulate and maybe developmentally how that looks like? I have a 7 and an 11-year-old.
Sure, and I think, for example, even just those tech plans, so that Common Sense Media is an example, because it just allows you to have opportunity to sit down and really talk about a plan as a family and the why behind that. So you're setting them up for success, but also too, opportunity for them to have a chance to regulate themselves. And so, again, dating myself because my kids are older, but it was video games was the big thing when my kids were younger. And so, like you, we didn't want to police them because that's not going to fix it. Kids will get sneaky, unfortunately, if we try to police and be hardcore. So we said, okay, what's a reasonable amount of time that we should see you playing games? We let them have their input. We talked about what we thought as parents, and so we set a time limit for the week. And they had choice in how they could use that time. They could use it up all at once on a Saturday and be done with it for the rest of the week. They could use it a little bit each day, but that helped them to learn how to regulate themselves. And of course, we gave them feedback, and they had to do it in an area where we were so that we could see. But that just helped them learn to regulate themselves, and they had to learn even to set timers We talked about all the things they could do to help them so that they could remember, because they would get distracted and then forget how much time they were using. So, but just teaching them all those different skills, because they're not born with all those organizational skills as we are as adults. So just helping them to plan for that.
And I was surprised just when through my counseling world, how many kids, whenever they said, oh, my mom, dad, Aunt Mary, Uncle Fred took my phone away for a week, and they first were bummed, but then by the end of the week, they would say, Miss Everett, it was actually really nice, and so they want those boundaries, even though they're going to push and shove a little bit, especially in the adolescent world. They really like the boundaries set for them, because they don't know how to create them yet, and that's, but having just those conversations at the front end, not as a consequence, that's probably the main thing, and just teachable moments within yourself. The more they see that, because they see us, they think they're adults already. And so just having that conversation, like, yeah, I was, I'm trying to create this habit for myself too. That just helps those conversations. And it makes it easier on our end. They're not us versus them.
Hi there. I have a kindergarten, not at Root, but Happy Hollow, and another one close to kindergarten. When I was in school, I had a very impactful teacher, or actually it was not a teacher, but a public speaker come, and I don't know if you had this in Arkansas because I'm from California. It was a DARE speaker, and they said, just say no to drugs. Has from high school to elementary and middle school, are there any programs or things that the school board is doing for student services, where they're bringing in speakers, or they have programs to make kids aware of essentially all the risks that technology provides?
Well, I would say, especially from the school counselor perspective, when they do their guidance lessons, there's different pieces that they do with technology, safety with technology, and then also just safety for themselves and being aware of the dangers and what we need to have conversation with your trusted adults. Also, too, I'm not sure within the tech person in your building, are there any cyber safety pieces? I know there's kind of cyber citizenship or digital citizenship, which is how to be appropriate and how to interact accordingly with technology.
Yes, I mean, we don't have a set curriculum that we do in each grade, but like you said, the counselor really does that a lot and talks about the safety of using the internet and social media impacts and things, even with our third and fourth graders. But and then teachers, we have professional development, and then they're based by what the state provides too. It's just us being very aware, and the teachers knowing how to monitor that. Our filters at school do a great job, but as we get into that, we do, we've luckily in elementary we don't have kids just have free range of getting on and surfing the internet or going places. Filters do that. We have Go Guardian, as I mentioned, that teachers can monitor and see all 25 kids in their class. If they have a small group, most of our teachers can have it up monitoring what they're doing. But I think having those conversations at home, and then our counselors hit that home too. And then I know as we get older, teachers do say, we can't be on these things, and we give that message to them of the safety piece. But I think, fortunately right now, I mean, it's something that we need to look at possibly as making sure that we do, because it seems like it's getting younger and younger that kids are accessing, whether we allow it or not. They have access somewhere, whether it's mom and dad's cell phone that I give my daughter and those type things. So I think it's just a big piece that we have to be mindful of.
While you hold that up, I'm going to try this. My name is Carly. I have 3 elementary age kids at Holcomb, and then one who will be there in a few years. I know that you don't all represent FPS, but a lot of you do, so thank you for your service in the school system, especially you, Officer Freeman. I appreciate having you at the high school. I had a question about Chromebooks first. Can you speak, those of you that work there, can you speak to their use at home? Because I know a lot of times my children will bring them home for snow days or different things. Do the filters all go away, and do we need to treat them like any other unlocked iPad with no protections? That's my first question.
I would say yes, because once they're there, if you connect them to your Wi-Fi, then they have access based on what filters and what parameters you have on your Wi-Fi. So a Chromebook is essentially just a device that hits the web. It has no storage memory on it. It's just a web surfing device. So really, there's not a whole lot of restrictions. So that goes back to the, what home Wi-Fi that you have and the parentals making sure that they're monitoring what their kiddos are on.
Okay. That's helpful. And then I wanted to know this doesn't just apply to Chromebooks, but as far as apps, what workarounds on tech do we need to be aware of that kids might be accessing, or workarounds they're doing to try to get away from parameters that have been set? I was hoping for tips and tricks to look for.
Of course, Officer Freeman may know specifics. I would also just refer back to the Common Sense Media, because within that information, they give a lot of really valuable information in there about all those different pieces and things as parents to be aware of, especially even with Snapchat. I mean, things that as a parent, if you're not using it, you wouldn't even know all the different things that you experience that students are using. So I would refer back to that resource too, because they get very specific about all those little workarounds in those areas.
Unfortunately, the one thing I would say is that as soon as you learned about one, they've got 3 others.
Oh, yes.
Funny story, when I was down at Children's, they built a texting service for kids who were staying inpatient. And a lot of times, children with cystic fibrosis will be in hospital for weeks and weeks at a time. And the system is supposed to shut down at 7 o'clock. Within 2 weeks, the entire population of cystic fibrosis in Arkansas knew how to get around those recommendations. They are far more tech savvy than you'll ever be. So the best advice I can give is just sometimes you have to sit down and say, hey, show me what you're doing on your device. What apps are you actually using? And just kind of making that an open conversation. I mean, that's not necessarily for the school, but at home, hey, let's go through what's this app on your phone do, and not say, I mean, obviously we got to keep it in a positive way and not a Big Brother, Overwatch way, but just kind of an expectation that you want to know what they're doing on these things. You do the best, but they're always going to be 2 steps ahead of you. Mm-hmm. Is this the reality of it? It makes it really fun.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at it from an overall perspective. Obviously, a big issue that we have at the high school, that I've seen here at the high school, is their quote-unquote trap phones or their backup phones that they buy. They'll go to Walmart or what have you and buy a little $10 phone, and then they'll just use the Wi-Fi from the school and use it to, message their friends or what have you. Just my personal opinion, and, I could be wrong on this, but is, when they start young and start with their phones, that constant communication as to, when you're setting those boundaries as to why you're setting them. I'm not saying that by the time they get to high school, because everything's so new, obviously, but I'm not saying by the time they get to high school that you can't still have those conversations and still make it to where they understand, but it's harder to retrain them once they get to the high school level because, 4 years or less, they're adults, then it's gonna be kind of harder to navigate through that. But if you start young and be like, hey, where you're setting those restrictions, that you're explaining what's going on, as they get older, they're more liable to accept those restrictions, as they're, say, disciplined for something that they did and those privileges get taken away. They'll accept them without feeling like they need to resort to some kind of sneaky alternative to get around those things.
And I do like the idea of just going down, sitting with them and having them show you their apps, because I know several years ago there was even, I guess, an app for your app where it'd look like the phone icon or different things that would cover up your app. So when you would see your child's device, you would think, oh, well, it's just part of what would be like on my phone. But really, it would be different. And so just knowing for what they have on there is just important as well.
And one thing I always talk to the students about is, I always go back to the driving the car thing, you're going to get a phone, but no social media for a year. But you can have, text message your family. Let's start there. Let me coach you how to, it's those baby steps, because that gives them that control where they, they want this, but I love you, and I'm going to make sure that I teach you how to use these things. So letting them, have all the apps. And I think the conversation with apps is a lot different than I think it's okay to have a game. I mean, kids do love playing games, and you can play with them. Or, there's so many different levels of those things that occur, but just baby steps, just like any part of parenting. But the social media side is just a beast.
And, resorting back to workarounds, just know that Snapchat, or those of you that have younger children that are just getting phones and stuff like that, Snapchat does have a, quote, for your eyes only, where they can have like private conversation there where you can't see them per se without a certain passcode. So if you're going through their apps and stuff, check all the ins and outs, check those little small tabs, make sure there's nothing going on. Same thing if you have an iPhone, you have photos, there's a little tab at the very bottom that says hidden, and it's now passcode protected, so anything that they're sharing and stuff, it won't show up in their camera roll, but it'll be in that little section there. So there's just small workarounds that are out there that they can use and have been using.
So real quick, so my other hat that I wear is as medical director for the Children's Safety Center, which is our local child abuse center. If some of this stuff is really scary, which it often is, the Safety Center does do classes on like internet safety and things like that. Casey Atwell is wonderful. She does the classes. They're all free. So if you're kind of like, hey, I've got a group of parents that might like to learn some of this, you can reach out to the center over there, and they would love to kind of do some stuff when it comes to all the not very fun stuff, the grooming and the sexting and all that kind of stuff that can be really important, unfortunately, in the child abuse world. So, and they're very educated on the different apps and the different ways that they are used and unfortunately exploited for predators. So.
Dr. Kohler, do they do that class for children?
I know that they do all kinds of different classes, well, they go to the schools. So yes, they do. I don't know specifically the internet safety one. They do a lot of different body safety ones. I would have to ask because they do a lot of stuff in programming but I'm not sure about that directly.
All right, thank you guys. It's 7:30. Could you give our panelists a round of applause? Thank you so much for your time. This little QR code is the same as our paper resource sheet, and the links would be easier to click through the QR code. All of the books on the table, feel free to check out. And then we have a survey that we would love for you to fill out. But thank you for your time tonight.